Welcome today to Mentor Time. Today, I want to talk about, have you claimed your name everywhere? I always start with your takeaway. Your name is your best brand asset, and consistency is critical. So if you'll put in the chat, however you define a brand, 0, I have none. 1, maybe I have one, I don't know. Or 2, yes. And that's totally your judgment. You can give yourself a decimal point if you feel like you need to be that precise. 2, 2. Okay, maybes. I'm not surprised. Another 2. Thank you all. That's why I wanted to focus on your name, and yet we talk a lot about branding. So here's what I hear from people commonly. I'm not self-employed, so I don't need a logo. I don't need a brand. This was me for many years. I still have people tell me, well, Sue, they find me for my skills and experience, not a brand. And it may apply to some of you too, listening today or watching in replay. And I did have to signal out public health since we're in an Ebola crisis, and it was on my mind this past week. I'm in public health. I don't need to do marketing, right? Everybody should just know we're good because public health is good. All right, how are we going to get there today? We're going to talk first about brand name, your name, brand logo, all of these. Then we'll go on to, are you using your name everywhere? And I always leave you with this last section. What should you do? And what you should do will be things we'll be going over today once you do your own assessment. So let's get started with brand name, your name, brand logo, all of these. Take a look at this and tell me in the chat what brand you think this represents. Okay, let's see. Okay. I have more Pepsis than Coke, but it's actually Coca Cola. And these are all the variations of Coca Cola that you see around the world. The one on the left, Mexican Cola. But we know that around the world, when we see that Coke bottle, and it's still very iconic, many are still available in different countries in glass, that is going to be the taste we trust. So why do we identify this so readily? Because it's consistent no matter how they built it out. You saw those skinny cans if you saw it quickly. That's different from the short fat cans or the tall fat cans, but we know that's Coca-Cola from the logo, the color. So 3 of the people who are here almost all the time, Peter, Sheila, and Stephanie, are going to appear. I'm just alerting you because I didn't have a chance to tell Sheila, but told Peter. And so Sheila, I'm starting with you. And I did a Google search to say, tell me about Sheila Atam in Nairobi working in agriculture and finance or something like that. And it came with exactly what you are and what you're doing at your work in BRAC. It shows that you're on LinkedIn. It shows that you're specializing in the, yes, and the top shows the BRAC connection, obviously. So true to her brand, and I love the yellow behind her, although I don't know that she always uses that. That was just a good headshot. Peter, searched on Peter. Now there's a lot of Peter Williams, so luckily Peter's LinkedIn is MPH there. So I said Peter Williams. I did say MPH in Atlanta because I knew there were a lot. And the ones from the middle up are all Peter. And you can see what he's known for, system strengthening, the things that he has expertise in, epidemiology, which he's been teaching lately now for CDC in Micronesia. And Stephanie, who's at CDC and isn't allowed to put a lot out there, but we figured out ways. Stephanie, it was just 10 years ago, 2016, when we started working together on your visibility. She comes through very strongly. She's there. She is their expert in a lot of evaluation, but also working on Ebola, monkeypox, and other things that aren't all in the very top little blurbs there. So each of these, I could search on their name and whatever they're working on, however they define themselves. Their name brought up a lot of things, including for all of you, first or second LinkedIn for you, and that's important as well. So why am I focusing on name when I started out talking about the brand name Coca Cola? There's something called relational trust. I had not heard this term specifically, but you often hear LinkedIn people and in webinars, in help groups, that people will say, well, you have to work with people you know, like, and trust. Know, like, and trust. Know, like, and trust. Everybody touts that. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes you don't like people, but you work with them and you trust them anyway. But think about what is the difference between what we talked about with Coca Cola and the work that you all do. Does anybody want to unmute and give me an answer, or put it in the chat if you're not feeling like you want to unmute?
I think Coca Cola has been around for centuries. I don't know when it first came into being, but it's incredibly recognizable. That iconic bottle, I've seen Coke written in Arabic in different languages, and you automatically know what it is because of their branding.
So it's consistent.
Yes.
It has something we can touch. It's tangible. What do we all provide? Services, intangible. Here's the thing about service providers. People trust the providers of services as much as the services being provided. And you'll see both of those. I send out the references when I send out the recording. And this is really important. So let me show you for me. I have my logo everywhere. In a Zoom box, you can see that I have Sue Mentors after my name. Most people will not recognize that immediately. They won't think of that. In fact, a recruiter who's a friend of mine told me a couple months ago, Sue, I wanted to find you and I couldn't remember your last name. So I Googled who's the cheerleader with pom-poms on LinkedIn. And apparently I came up, which is good, because if you see this in a Zoom box, people will say, oh, that's got to be Sue. But there's no hesitation when you see my headshot, or you know that I'm offering a service. There is that direct link with a person, and that's being a provider of services. So I want you to remember that, because the brand and the logo are important. It's really cute that I have pom-poms, and I think it helps everybody celebrate their wins. But that's not critical. What I do with you all is I bring the pom-poms and you do the work. All right, so now let's talk about name. The name is the link that you have, not Sue Mentors, my brand, not the mentor with pom-poms. Not everybody knows that about me, but everybody knows me as Sue Griffey. So let's talk about, are you using your name everywhere? Think about your name, what it's attached to besides your whole life. Is there a place, an unusual place that you have your name attached to? I'm just putting out there a very general question. It's not specific for a reason. Again, unmute or write in the chat if you want. No one? You don't have your name on a park bench somewhere? Hopefully there's no name in a cemetery yet. Peter says the usual places. Thank you, Peter. Here's where we start. Not a test, not an assessment. It's really kind of an audit. So for each screen I show you, I'm going to explain what we're looking at. And you can give yourself 1 point. I'll let you know when you can award yourself a point if you want to go along with this. So your name belongs in your email signature. And the first few, these are usual. You probably have it there. But I do find people do not put it in their signature, and they don't always put their email in that same signature block. Why? They tell me, Sue, I'm writing from an email, so people know my email address. But guess what? If you're like me and someone wants to have me recommend them to contact someone else, I'm going to block and copy that signature block and send it along with an email. Oh, you'll hear this again later. Don't make me do your work for you. It also makes it very complete. It shows your name, your degrees. I encourage you to put your degrees there. location if you're comfortable, mobile if you're comfortable, and a professional email. No AOL, no Yahoo. Those are considered out of date. And as we get older, we want to rid ourselves of the ageism attachments as much as we can. On your cover letter, on your resume, the heading and the signature on your cover letter, name with degrees. Make sure that you've got in your signature your name with degrees. Don't just do your signature. I forgot to say, on this page, you can give yourself 2 points, one for your email and one for resume or cover letter. I'm not going to ask you to verify it. You can grade yourself how you want it. I just want you to track these. And you will get a list of these at the end. All right, so then there are these things that we do that have to get submitted, whether it's a job application, sometimes it's an assignment, or that's what people call it. Called it, when I first started the course, it was like assignment for Sue instead of step one. So this isn't helpful for people. And in the old days when people emailed resumes, I used to have probably 20 or 30 in my on my hard drive of people that I had no idea whose resumes they were without opening them. So don't make me do your work for you. So when you're submitting or sending something online, here's different formulas that all include important information. Your first name, last name, not just an initial. The job title, if you're applying for a job, for example, and some version of the date. You can put them in any order you want. And guess what? If you name this in your hard drive, that will be easier for you to find. And maybe you do that also when you go, when you do all your filing. So give yourself a point if you're pretty good at naming some variation of better names, more descriptive names for that. So I think we're up to 3 points now. And then there are the things that I call work products. This is your intellectual property, and they might be separate reports by you or collaborative, but in the old days, we got lots of titles. Draft for team. Okay, that's not helpful. Some kind of date and some kind of report. Again, not helpful. Org ABC milestone. Hopefully that wasn't going to the funding agency with no other information on it. Again, some variation of date, name, and the kind of document that you are submitting or a reason for it. So if you do some version of these, go ahead and give yourself 1 point on the audit. The next one's easy. I can look at everybody who's attending and see that you've got your name on your meeting box. And if you also have a picture for when your video goes off, that's also very helpful. When my video goes off, you see my headshot there. It just keeps the association going with your name. So 1 point if you've got that. Now we're moving on to things that drove me nuts in the old days. Events that you schedule or you ask someone to schedule. And people would request meetings of me. Or when I worked at a company and someone wanted to meet with me because they could see my calendar internally in the company, I would get these kinds of appointments. Meeting with Sue, Sue's work due, whatever that means, career stuff. It's really, really difficult when I've always lived by my calendar. So I now take control for those who've worked with me in mentoring. I arrange the appointments specifically because I want to make sure it has the person I'm talking to so that on your calendar it shows you're talking to Sue. Some kind of subject. I almost always put the time in there in my time zone just to remind people. So here are 2 things this week that I'm doing. One is a business meeting and Sue mentors on Wednesday. That's our semi-annual co-work for the CV resume update. But today you saw that the appointment led with MentorTime. So at least you knew that if you recognize that was associated with me, that's what I label those for. So when you schedule meetings, you're in control, and that's great. What happens when you don't? Well, One of the two big reasons I wanted to talk about this is it drives me nuts. This was from last week, so it's not as clear as I would like it to be. When I get all these things on my calendar, I'll accept a webinar or I'll even want to go to the webinar. But it comes on my calendar, I think, and a week later, I'm looking at it like, who's presenting AI enhanced career pivot? Do I want to go? And if you open it up, there's nothing in the appointment that has any detail that says, so-and-so's presenting it, and we're going to cover these topics. So there's one of the four here, MWM, that's the Marketing with Meller group, which Brenda Meller runs. So at least the first thing she leads with is her name, in this case, the name of the group. In the top right, that comes in as webinar. These are great webinars run by the Training Mag Network, and they're all about different aspects of learning and development. And when it comes in, I have to take it out because I don't want that long webinar there. I write TMN. But the other two, without opening them, I have no idea. Sometimes I have to choose. There's multiple on my calendar because I still have FOMO. I want to go to everything. So I have to open them to look at them and then try to figure out, do I want to go? Now, I put you in capital because these aren't events you schedule. But if you're ever in this position, hopefully you'll think about it and think, oh, yeah, let me lead with my name. You know, if Peter's going to do a webinar on what it's been like to teach epidemiology in Micronesia someday, he could call it PW colon. At least it would be informative enough that people would say, oh, that might be Peter. And again, just another example, MWM this week, this is Brenda, preceded by one thing that I now know they always do at 11 o'clock on Thursday. It's a British company called Bright Carbon. You have to open it up, but at least their appointment has this detail in it. And then NCDA, and I'm trying to remember what it is, it's a professional organization. That whole long title, Third Thursday Chat Zoom link, like really, you couldn't abbreviate it? NCDA is at the end. You can see the end there. So I'm just complaining to you. These are big people with big companies and big impact. And it's only Brenda Meller and then Hung Lee, who runs Brain Food on Air. He's a global recruiter who has great webinars every week, whose events are automatically set up with the name of the holder of the event first. All right, so just to be aware of that, you'll start to notice on your calendar, well, you don't have to say Sue's right, but all right. These last two are things that you don't have a lot of control over, but as you start to do some of these things, like hold events or give out freebies, here are probably 20 freebies that I've downloaded or resources I've gotten. I've gone to webinars and people say, you want this? Oh, that's great. Like Rick Altman, he's a great presentation trainer. And he has that one that's down in last week that's not so stolen tips. Rick, you talk about branding all the time. When someone is on a webinar and gives you a resource, I think, okay, I'll look at it later. I don't have time to look at it now. And that means I have to open up every single thing and decide if it's worth it or not. If I knew who was presenting it, that would be really helpful. And sometimes I do paste the name in there. That's really important. And I find this is the biggest area. You can see this, the biggest area that people who are very smart in marketing, very smart, clever people who are LinkedIn experts, coaches, because that's what all of these are. And not one of them has their brand name or their personal name in there, which I think is a huge loss. And if you do visuals on LinkedIn, hopefully this will help you. So you don't have to give yourself credit for any of these. These are the extras that I wanted to let you know about. I think I forgot to get the link to what he was presenting wasn't even about climbing. He wrote some post that was about having useful marks along the way. The only branding in there is at the bottom, Notebook LM, and that's what originated it. That's not his branding, which should be on there because he had to give the instructions for it, I assume. And then I wanted to save this from Melanie Goodman. The only reason that I have her message underneath it is because I took it on my phone early one morning when I'm going through LinkedIn. At the bottom of her visual, you can see Trevisan Consulting, but that's all that's there. The advantage, though, is that at least there's something there that tied her company to her name. That was helpful on mobile. But you can see how quickly, when people are busy, life gets away from you. You might save something from Richard Vanderblom, who's been telling us a lot about how LinkedIn's changes are now rewarding different kinds of posting. But I see even on his, he will have something on there, but he won't have his name all the time. And if you're on LinkedIn and you see one of these carousels and you want to download it, it probably annoys you that when you download it, it comes in with a series of numbers like this long, 8 or 10 numbers, .pdf. And yet you can see in Linda Brubaker's Lunch and Learn upcoming events, you can see up at the top right corner, it says upcoming events PDF. So she did title it. Well, guess what? That text is not an image. You can copy that. Now, yes, it's going to make a two-step process, but at least it'll be easier for you to track it. If you're downloading something, you copy that, block and copy that before you hit the download button, and then you'll get all these letters and numbers. And I just click on the folder link that comes and pushes me into downloads, and then I rename it really quickly. It doesn't take me long, and then at least I have some ability to take it through and think, oh, upcoming events, that's got to be Linda. Here's some visuals that I thought did a good job. This is an image. And so when an image saves from LinkedIn, you can copy it and save it. This person, the file name, like the others for PDFs, will have numbers. But this person put her name in, her organization, right at the bottom. In fact, she even put the date on it, which I thought was great. Because no matter what people tell you about keeping things clean and neat and all of that, we're all looking for trying to give people like Shedra credit for what they've done. But you can't give credit if you've not got a name on there to help them out. So when I saved it, here's what I love about images. If you didn't know, at least in Windows 11, when you're in File Explorer, at the top right, that details little thing that just sits there that you can click on will show you a PDF. No, it just shows you there's a PDF, but it will show you a picture of any image, which I love because I can quickly go through and think, oh, that's the image I was looking for. If I didn't name Shedra's picture anything that I wouldn't know well. And here's a 3-page carousel. I wanted to point this out because the name of the document in this case was over on the right. It used to always be over here. Now it's on the left, like I showed you first with Linda. But you can copy that. You also see that on the very first page at the bottom, he told you who did the analysis and he gave you his LinkedIn contact. So at least he's there. He is the one that did all of this work, Ethan Terracone. All right. So hopefully you counted up. I'm going to have you go over these in a minute. See how many you got for the first 6 things we talked about. And if you don't mind sharing your score in the chat, that would be great. And if you don't want to, that's fine too. I'm going to go through so you can remind yourself and score yourself. First thing we talked about was signature block, having your name and email. Oh, thank you, Marianne. Resume, CV, cover letter, heading. Third one was meeting box, name and pick. Documents and reports, name and date, things that you submit online. Work products, especially team documents and reports where things are named in all sorts of ways. And then any events you schedule, and maybe a lot of you may not be doing them. So I'm seeing a lot of 3s and 4, great. And Peter says 6, that's fine. I know you have 2 emails because I'm always thinking about your emails and Sheila's. both of whom are not consistent with your professional brand, but that's how you communicate with me. Thank you. This is great. Thank you very much. So, as we wind up, I want to remind you the takeaway. Your name is your best brand asset. And hopefully, now you can see why I'm not talking about brands, but about your name. And consistency in using it is critical. So, I would like to know from you all, what one takeaway from today will you act on in the next 2 days? Is there anything that you think, oh, I can change this immediately? You may not have anything. And you can either unmute or you can put it in the chat. Stephanie wants to be more consistent about my name and calendar invite. Hooray. That's a great one. Thank you for that. And while people are writing in the chat, there are a few references. There's one I forgot to put in and need to go back and do it. And I'll send those to you in the email when it comes out. Peter wants to do a calendar invite. Marion's going to be more descriptive generally and descriptive consistency in descriptive naming. Thank you. Anybody have anything that they want to add to this or anything I've left off?
I just had a question. I know that you are in a lot of different time zones because I'm thinking about where you have the time in the meeting invite too, because I know you're dealing with people in multiple invites and places and associations. So if you're like in one time zone though, would you say you would do it anyway if you're just basically operating out of one email and in the same time zone and not working internationally consistently?
You can play it by ear. It's totally up to you. I put the time in the subject line also for me, because sometimes I glance at my calendar and it's not clear if I'm glancing
Oh,
on my phone, is it 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, or sometimes if it's 1:30. So
okay.
I do it just as a matter of habit, but I can see that other people may not feel they need to do that. I just want you to be aware of the opportunities that are to make sure we're being clear. Now, I will tell you, I work across the world, as you all know, and I will tell people that the meetings come in my time zone, but they should appear on your time zone if people use their calendar. Not everybody does. But I learned early on in the course that not everybody in the countries that they're calling in from is used to the idea that there's a different time zone for people. And I don't mean that in any value judgment. I just mean they're used to working, for example, in Kenya. They work in Kenya, maybe they work in Uganda, but that's the same time zone. So I'm more sensitive to it. I just want to remind people that I am in the Eastern time zone and at least alert people about that. Thank you, Tal. More details in the email signature. I think that's a great idea. It's what I call a credibility cue. When you have your name, when you have your degrees there, when you have your information, people look at you and think, this is the person who's really prepared. This is a person who can do the job, whatever. You just, as I said, don't make me do your work for you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Sue, I was thinking about the naming your documents when you send them. And I'm in a similar situation where I get all my students send a document with logbook one or just logbook one template, which is what they download. They don't they don't put their name on it, they don't put a date or anything on it. So then I download 10 into my downloads folder and then I have to slog through finding everyone. And WHO documents are terrible like that too. It gives this whole nonsensical string of like 15 or 20 characters before it gets to anything about the name. And
Yeah.
so I I see that a lot too. And yeah, that's a really good way to really like think about what name should you have on it and what should you put so that the person knows what they're actually looking at instead of having to open all of them before they figure it out.
Yeah, thanks for that support, Peter. It drives me nuts when people that are big business people give me a Google Doc and it says summary table. and that's all it says. And it's like they miss their own branding, even though they talk about it, LinkedIn or whatever. Even though I tell people in the course, when you submit it, here's your file name, rubric, and all of this. Occasionally, I still get the biopara for Sue, and no date, no name. And just reminds you that people are busy. They don't necessarily choose to not pay attention, but they're also trying to do the work. Peter, as you were talking, I was thinking there's a lot of cultural stuff that we probably do that people aren't as used to, especially if they're early in their career and they haven't done so much collaboration, except maybe in grad school in terms of submitting assignments and things. So everybody gets a pass from me. It's just that, you like to think you give clear instructions and then you find out when you don't. Sometimes they were my fault when I put these are the errors people make in step 1 after submitting your biopara. Someone finally said to me in the step evaluation, "So why am I reading this after I've submitted it? It's too late then." I'm like, "Oh yeah, duh." So we can all learn from that. But the consistency in naming, you all have brought some great examples, and your takeaways are the examples that can really make a difference in how frustrated you get with trying to find a document, or just having things in a place that you know you can find it easily without having to go through, as you said, Peter, 10 logbook template doc or whatever it was, XLS, and figure out who had submitted and who hadn't, who's late with their assignment. All right, any last questions or comments or thoughts and ideas?
This was awesome. I learned so much in a short amount of time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Sure, Tal.
What do you think about logos? I see that you have a logo and a website. For those who like don't really own a business, or I guess just junior in their career.
No, it's a good question. When people are putting together a career like Peter is, consulting, some long-term, some short-term, periodic, whatever, when people are unemployed and are really actually unexpectedly self-employed, because even if you don't have a job, you still have to figure out money and run a business, get yourself out doing business stuff, applying, networking, whatever. Don't focus so much on the logo, but I tell people over and over again, we discussed this a couple weeks ago in portfolio careers. We discussed it last year a couple times. If you have any kind of additional things that you do, you may want to use LinkedIn's company page feature. And FYI, I don't have a website. I have a domain. I finally took it out because I never got the website done, because it was going to cost me more money than I was ever going to need for that just to have a website. But Sue Mentors, my company page, is woefully underwritten right now. I could do it better. The company page is very easy to set up. They're not asking you at this point to verify you're an LLC or whatever paperwork, thank goodness. And it helps you separate out what you focus on primarily. For me, it's mentoring, but I also do other kinds of things in terms of career advising. So that way you can quickly put together a logo. Do you need one? Absolutely not. Ron runs a big, huge effort with a group of people he collaborates with, and they do a lot of things by email, and I think the company has a website. But he runs it as sort of more of a consultant view, and he chooses not to have a company page because most of their work is either in person together or through email and WhatsApp, maybe WhatsApp. So it's up to you how you want to do it, but it's easy to claim your name in your company page. For those who don't want to make up a business name, use your initials. SJG, those are my initials. SJG Consulting. SJG. No one's going to ask you. You can make an easy template in Canva, although I have been told that Canva logos are not necessarily, how can I phrase this? They're not they have some commercial value, and if you use someone else's logo and it was a template put up and you use it, you could be asked to take it down if it looked too, if my SJG looked too close to someone who was SBG. They might say, oh, well, you used my colors, you used my style of text, you know, italics or whatever. So does that help you think about it?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Thanks.
very
It's
helpful.
a great question. It really is a good question. Thank you for bringing that up. All right. Anything else before we close? And I don't remember when we're talking, but it has to be next late June because I'll be away from the 6th to the 22nd in Japan. First time I'm going to Japan, except for the
Oh,
airport. Yeah,
have
I'm
a
excited.
wonderful time.
Thank you. I will, but I'll be around before then if anybody's coming to, let's see, we have this week we have CV, resume, co-working, and then we have office hours next week, I believe it is. And I need to get out a periodic message that'll summarize all the services, Marianne, that'll help you give you more information and decide, you know, what you might want to attend. I appreciate you attending. It's great to see
Well,
you
I was
here.
so curious.
Now you know.
Curiosity gets me in many places.
Hey, yes, I remember. I remember. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I
Thank you so
love that
much.
you
That
all
was
jumped
great.
in. Take care, and I'll see you either sometime this week or next, or I'll see you in June. Great to have you all. The recording will
Okay.
be out by tomorrow, I hope.
Sue,
Thanks so much.
I have a
Oh,
question
yeah,
on
go
the
ahead.
CV
Sure.
co-working. Is it like a 2-hour block of just working together, or the
I've changed it
presentation?
to 1 hour. We started with 2. That's why I need to get the message out. It's now, and then we went to 1.5, and 1 hour is enough. What I find mostly is 1 or 2 people will ask to go into a breakout room and do work, and others want to check in, like, oh, Sue, I haven't done my BioPair in a while. You know, what should I do? Or how should I handle this transition from work? So it's kind of both advice, but also space for you to know that you've got time to work on it in a breakout room, because it's always easier to be accountable. Well, I call it getting it done, to get it done for when someone else gives you an opportunity.
Okay. Well, good to know what is exactly going on.
Yep.
Thank
There's
you.
no obligation, and I have nothing formal prepared. So I think Ron's coming this time. He usually does. So it's usually both of us, and that way you get advice from one or both of us, depending on what else is going on.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome. Take care, everyone. Thanks
you.
again.
Mm.
And thanks to Sheila for staying up late in Nairobi. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
Bye.
Welcome. Bye, everyone.